Hello and welcome to Rick's RC Flying Channel. It's a brief update on the Airtruk project. Now, I thought I was going to kind of get this airplane ready still this year, but I fell behind because of other projects going on. And winter is definitely on its way. We had a snowfall already. So I thought I was going to get it flight ready and leave it in the primer and flight maiden it that way before any real serious detailing was applied. So I decided I'm going to continue this project off and on through the winter and hopefully get it completely finished for next year. So that being said, I'm currently working on inside this rear cabin. So I've been sanding inside there, and I'm going to apply the base coat and then install the windows, because if I install the windows now, to get inside there and mask the inside of the windows is just going to be way too awkward. So I'm going to finish it and then install the windows. So it's a little awkward just the way that cabin is. Here's the window frame, so they'll be finished off, and then final installation of the windows. Also, with the exterior of the airplane, I'm sanding a lot of the primer off and getting it basically prepped to apply some scale detailing, such as panel lines where needed, and all the riveting. And for what it's worth, too, with respect to sanding, now normally I have different shaped sanding blocks, but this airplane's got a lot of curves and different shapes everywhere. So obviously the easiest way is with your hand, so you can properly follow these curves. Now, of course, sanding by hand is probably one of the most common ways. And for what it's worth, particularly if you're kind of new at it, is bear in mind that when you're sanding by hand, wherever your fingers are making contact with the sandpaper, the pressure points from your fingertips is where the greatest removal off the surface from the sandpaper is going to take place. So in other words, if you got two fingers on here and you go back and forth like that, you're ultimately really just sanding two grooves in here. You may not necessarily see it at this stage, but if you have a very glossy finish and under certain lighting conditions, you may detect some slight unevenness to the surface. It kind of depends. Now, of course, I sand this way as well, but particularly at this stage, 80% of my sanding is done in a circular motion. So therefore, really, it's a moot point, the finger pressure, because of this pattern shape. The other thing I do is I'm only really using the weight of my hand, very light pressure as I'm sanding. I'm not really pushing hard down. I'm not looking to, for massive removal. And all I'm trying to do is just break this primer surface, reduce a layer of primer, and, ultimately wanting a really smooth finish. That's actually why I'm only wearing a rubber tipped glove, is it just gives me really good control over the sandpaper, particularly when I'm going around curves. The sandpaper never slips out of my hand. So, the rubber texture of the glove gives me really good control over the sandpaper, particularly because I'm putting such light pressure on. Anyways, for what it's worth. So once the panel lines and rivets are applied, it'll get a very light dusting of primer, a little bit of sanding here and there if necessary, and the wing will be treated the same way. As a matter of fact, the flight controls of the wings have external ribs, so the whole thing is going to take quite a while to get through that process. I'll also show you some photos that I've taken during the construction of the struts. They're made out of aluminum. They have an airfoil shape, and they're actually load bearing. So I'll give us just a brief description how these were basically constructed. So that's where we're at. So let's take a look at this at the struts. So there we have the initial construction of the struts, which is flat aluminum. It's a 6061, And as I mentioned before, they actually are load bearing. Where the arrow is showing, it's attached to hardwood, which is actually a spar that runs right through to both sides. And even the landing gear is in that area. So everything meets at that point. And so there's quite a bit of stress, either from the wings, positive or negative, or from the landing gear. Now, there's many different ways of fabricating struts. I mean, they can be made just simply out of wood. They can be wood with metal fittings at the end, or in this particular case, of course, they're all metal. Now, the plans actually called for the flat metal struts to be covered with 3mm spruce on both sides and then shaped to an airfoil. I've made them that way in the past for different aircraft, but in this particular case, I decided to use streamlined aluminum. Now, I purchased my streamlined aluminum tubing from K&S Precision Metals. They make many different metal products that are well suited for our hobby. Pretty well, most hobby shops carry it. As a matter of fact, you can even find their products on Amazon. Comes in 36-inch lengths, and the streamlined version I'm using comes in different widths. I happen to be using 5/8 of an inch. Now, once the struts were inserted within the streamlined tubing, which I had put epoxy in, and then the tubing was properly positioned relative to the attachment points. Once they were secured, I went and drilled a hole that literally went through both aluminum tubes and both aluminum struts. Then that was secured. I also applied thin CA glue. And this was all done while it was attached on the airplane because I wanted the struts to be permanently lined up with the attachment points on the airplane. And this makes it then very easy to install them and to take them off. Now, as I fabricated the other side, I'm taking here various measurements. I use a divider extensively for this kind of work. It's very precise and quick and easy than always using a ruler. And this way I was ensuring that both sides were exactly the same. So here we have one side of the struts. They're completed and they have primer on them, and they'll soon be getting the final base coat. Now they're permanently in that position, so as I said, it'd be very easy to install on the airplane. And here we can see they look very much like the struts on the real airplane. So if you have any questions or comments, like always, I welcome them. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.